Good morning, everyone.
Don't they look beautiful? Amen, yes, they do. Praise God. I particularly like my pastor's outfit. He looks like the king of the castle. Love it. But in honor of our African Heritage Sunday, we're going to sing God Bless Africa. And it is the national anthem for South Africa. And so in honor of that and in honor of our African heritage, I'm going to ask you if you could please stand while we sing the national anthem. God bless Africa. Kosi Sikeleli Africa.
My cry, and he pitied every groan. As long as I live and troubles rise, I'll hasten to his throne. You know why? Because he meets me at his throne. He's there to hear my humble cry. He's there to satisfy my needs when I meet him at his throne. I love the Lord. He heard my cry. Do you love the Lord this morning? Do you truly love the Lord this morning? Let us sing this with all our heart, a love song to God. I love you, Lord. Can we stand and sing this? I love melody to the Lord. Sing it with all your heart. with all your conviction.
I love the Lord.
I love the Lord.
He heard my cry.
He heard my cry.
And pitied every groan.
And pitied every groan. Long as I live and troubles rise,
I'll hasten to His throne. Do you really love the Lord?
I love the Lord.
I know He heard my cry.
He heard my cry.
And He's pitied every groan.
Long as I live and troubles rise, I'll hasten to His throne.
I love the Lord.
I love the Lord. He heard my cry and pitied every groan.
Long as I live,
Long as I live and troubles rise,
I'll hasten to His throne.
I'll hasten to His throne.
I'll hasten, I'll hasten.
I'll hasten to His throne. I'll hasten to His throne. I'll hasten to His throne. I'll hasten to His throne.
I love the
Long as and trouble I'll hasten to His throne. Oh, I love the Lord. Come on, if you love the Lord in here today, come on, give God your praise. Say, He heard. Pity every thought. Long as I live as trouble I'll hasten to His throne. Come on, just lift it. I'll hasten to His throne. Come on, just give God all the glory, honor, and praise, and say, I'll hasten. Said, I'll hasten to His throne. God,
Lord, I need you every day and every hour. I'll hasten to. One more time, I'll hasten to. Hasten to his throne. Come on, let's give God a hand clap of praise in here today. Come on, I think we can do better than that up here in Framingham. Let's give God a hand clap of praise. Isn't God worthy? Isn't God worthy? Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us rejoice his name together. It's truly a blessing and a pleasure to be here with you on this day. And I first give honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who's the author and the finisher of our faith. I give thanks to your pastor, my friend, my big brother in ministry, my friend and confidant, Reverend Dr. J. Anthony Lloyd. Can you give him a hand clap of praise? Come on, you can do better than that. This is your shepherd. Give God some praise for the shepherd of this house. I bring you greetings from the historic 12th Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. Arthur T. Gerald is my pastor, and I graciously and humbly serve as a youth and young adult minister at 12th Baptist Church. I see some faces from 12th out there, and I see a little one back there, and it's always good to see familiar faces. I also want to acknowledge my fiance, Devin, who came out here with me. And Devin is, I never take it lightly that I have her support, because at least I know she'll tell me the truth. But it's good to be with you all on this day as we celebrate African Heritage Month. I'm a child of the South, and when you're a child of the South, there's some things that just stick to your bones, like cornbread and collard greens. But every once in a while, there's some hymns that stick to you. They say, pass me not, O gentle Savior, O Lord, hear my humble cry. Oh, while on others thou art calling, oh Lord, do not pass me by. Then an old deacon to come up and say, oh, let me at the throne of mercy, oh, find a sweet relief. Oh, I'm kneeling there in deep contrition. Oh Lord, heal my unbelief. And then the whole church will get up on their feet and say something like this. I'm calling, say. I think y'all know this. Oh Lord, say, why don't you hear my humble cry? Oh, while on others thou art calling, oh Lord, do not pass me by. Can we sing that chorus one more time? Oh, I'm calling. Oh Lord, oh God, we need you. We need you right away, God. And God, we came to have church in here today. And so we're going to let go of our own agendas, let go of our own thoughts, let go of everything that we came in here with, and let you have your way. God, we thank you, God, because your people need a word from you. And so, God, as I come to break the bread of life, hide me behind your cross. God, guide my mind in all of my ways and actions. God, increase all of you and decrease all of Willie so that your people may hear a word from on high. And so our ask today is simple, that may the words of our mouths and the meditations of all of our hearts, minds, and souls be acceptable in your sight. Oh God, you are still our strength. And God, when we look back over it, we know that you're still our Redeemer. And God, we'll be so gracious to give you all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise. In the precious name of your Son, Jesus, the risen Christ, we do pray. And let every heart and mind say amen. 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 If you can just turn in your Bibles with me to the second penned letter to the Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter and the 8th through the 10th verses. 2 Corinthians, just want to make sure y'all paying attention. 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter and the 8th through the 10th verses. And if you can just stand for the reading of God's holy word, if you're able. 2 Corinthians, 4th chapter, 8th through the 10th verses. I ask that you pray with me, for this is my 4th time standing before this holy roster this week, so pray with me. Read simply, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed. We're hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. If I could just preach from a topic today, I preach not yet, but almost. Come on, look to your neighbor, tell them not yet, but almost. Find another neighbor, just smile at them, say not yet, but almost. You may be seated in the house of God. My brothers and sisters, I am always excited for this month because I am a very proud African-American young black man from Southwest Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the things that they tried to do in my young life from the time that I came out of my mother's womb until I became a young man and left the hills of Atlanta, Georgia, they tried to instill in me a pride and self-identity that you knew that everything that you could do was possible if you believed in yourself and you knew who you were. Every month I come back to the fact that even as a child at Greenbrier Early Learning Academy, every morning they put on, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. 4 years old, I knew very much so that this beautiful kiss from this God's son was something that I should be proud of. But the other day I was talking with one of my best friends, and he wasn't so enthused about this month. He said, yes, Willie, it's a great accomplishment. Yes, things are good for some of us, but I'm not too sure that I can still have my faith when little black boys and little black girls are being harassed in the streets by those who've been called to protect and serve. He said, I'm not too sure how I can deal with these realities. I know we celebrate slavery. I know that we celebrate Jim Crow. I know we celebrated Black Power. I know we are now dealing with Black Lives Matter, but I'm just tired of having to deal with this again and again and again. And he said, "You the preacher, so what do you have to say? Because I'm losing my faith." Now, I'm not always the one that gets posed this question, because I'm usually protected by the cloth. People usually assume that I already got it all together. But he posed this question, and it caused me to ponder. I said, "Friend," I won't call his name, I said, "you're right. There are some things that are detestable. There are some things that are frustrating. You're right. People shouldn't have to live in a city where they can't get clean water. You're right, our children shouldn't have to go to school and deal with microaggressions of racism. You're right that we shouldn't have to worry about the very ones that are called to protect and serve the hurt and abusers. I shouldn't have to be afraid to walk through a store or to walk down the street despite whatever I got on." You're right. But I said the difference is that the very reasons you lost your faith are the reasons I kept mine.
Well now.
I said, brother, the very reasons that you are losing your faith are the reasons I keep mine. Because when I see slavery, I saw that we made it through. When I see Jim Crow, I saw that we made it through. When I think about Black Power, I see that we're still here. Now that we're dealing with Black Lives Matter, I knew that from the beginning that we are still here. So friend, have you lost your faith? Not yet, but almost. And if we're honest, we too have had some not yet but almost moments in our lives where our faith has been backed up against the wall and it seemed like all hope was gone. There were times we wanted to throw in the towel. There were times we wanted to keep crying because the tears wouldn't stop falling. There were times where gloom consumed our days and our nights. There were times that just seemed like they were too hard to overcome. But there were times where you had to dig deep and find it within yourself to remind yourself that greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. Greater is she that is in me than she that is in the world. And I don't know who I'm preaching to today, but I know I got about 2 or 3 people that can testify that they've had some not yet but almost moments in their lives, and they've had to pause and consider, but maybe you've been there in your life and you've had to reframe your theological notions so that you knew that you had the strength to endure and overcome. Can I preach this how God gave it? Beloved, I've observed that it is in our confrontations with the calamity that we as humans find it hard to freely and fully encapsulate how we feel. And this challenge to express such emotionality gives us to look into different mediums to liberate our thoughts, and we look to different mediums to speak towards our emotions and our beliefs that are usually imprisoned within us. Furthermore, we spar with the hardships, and when we spar with these hardships, we forget how to function. And we need reminders every once in a while that we can make it through what we're going through. And when I run into hard times, I like to look to the African American canon and collection of arts to remind me that I can get over what I'm going through. And we are people who have experienced a lot. James Weldon Johnson said, we have come over a way where tears have been watered, and simultaneously we know how to grab deep pain and great joy all at the same time. Whether it's a spiritual, whether it's a hymn, whether it's jazz, whether it's blues, whether it's R&B, rock and roll, poetry, novels, theater, dance, hip hop, we've always been in the business of being able to express deep pain and great joy all at the same time. I always have a point of reference to remind me that I have what it takes to get through. I'm reminded of this poem that was written by the literary giant Langston Hughes at the age of 21, entitled Mother to Son. The poem says, well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It said tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpets on the floor blare. But all the times I've been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you stare. Don't you sit down on those stairs because you find it kind of hard. Boy, don't you fall now because I still going, son, and I still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Every once in a while, you have to be reminded that life will have tacks in it. Every once in a while, we have to be reminded that life comes with some splinters. Every once in a while, we have to be reminded that life comes with some boards torn up. But you got to keep on climbing. You got to keep on reaching. You got to keep turning corners. You may even have to go in the dark where there seems to be no light. But you got to have faith to know that in these moments there's always a light, because the Lord is our light and our salvation. Whom shall I fear? Is there anybody in this place that can testify that even when there's struggles in life, they know that God is their strength, that God is the strength of their life, the Lord is the joy of their sorrow, the Lord is their hope and peace? And I just need about 2 or 3 people that know that we can make it through, because we've got God's power through Jesus Christ. Not yet, but almost. And that's what we see here in this 4th chapter of this letter penned to the early followers at Corinth, where the Pauline voice was trying to assist them to get through the hardships that they were facing. Now, one must understand that this letter is the second communication to this community and was written around 53 or 54 CE. And Paul, who established this church, was now in a situation that his leadership was being challenged and the strife was causing the community problems. Now, if we look back to 1 Corinthians, one would understand that Paul had already had to address some of these issues because there were factions that were being created in the church. I'll say it again. I know sometimes we get self-righteous. There were some factions being created in the church, and these voices were partitioning crowds. There were some following Paul. There were some following Apollos. There were some following Cephas. There were some following Jesus. And Paul wanted them to realize that it wasn't about Paul. It wasn't about Apollos. It wasn't about Cephas. It ain't about you, but it's all about Jesus.
Always about Jesus.
And I think that's a good place to pause this morning, because some of us turn to everything and everyone to do the job that only Jesus can do. I'll say it again. I want you to get that. Some of us turn to everything and everyone to do the job that only Jesus can do. Friends are good. Family is good. Your pastor is good. Advice and self-help books are good. But there are some situations that Jesus is the only one that can help. I'll say it again. I want you to leave with something. There are some situations in life where mama can't help you, where daddy can't help you, where auntie and grandmama and great-grandmama can't do nothing for you. All you have is Jesus. And I think I got about 2 or 3 saints that can testify that there are some situations in their lives that only Jesus could handle. And he's the only one that was able. I think Jude said it like this: now unto him who is able. Now unto him who is able. Maybe it was sickness, but now unto him who is able. Maybe it was your finances. Now unto him who is able. Maybe you were deep down and depressed. Now unto him who is able to keep you from falling. Is there anybody in this place that can give your praise to God? Because once you realize that God was able, you found out that you could make it through. I think you could tweet that one today. Once you realize that God was able, you realize that you can make it through. There were factions in the church. And it was causing confusion for Paul. This was an issue that Paul thought he put to the side. He thought he dealt with it already. He thought he settled it in the first letter. And here he is again addressing the very issue, and now it's reared its head in their community again. I I think that's a good place to pause there. Because there have been times where we thought we closed the chapter on some issues in our lives. And we came to the conclusion that we had adequately dealt with the situation.
Yes.
Y'all acting like maybe I'm talking about. There were some situations, some issues that we thought we had closed the door on in our lives. And somehow, some way, we end up finding ourselves having to address that same issue again in our lives. Have you been there? I'm in the right crowd then. Well, the very situation that you went to God about, that you went to God to get you through, was seemingly done with, and all of a sudden you are doing a double take because you're right back where you thought you left. Have you been there? Where you thought you were done with some people you were dealing with, you thought you were done with some problems, you thought you were done with some situations, you thought you were done with some stereotypes, you thought you were done with some trials and some relations. Have you been there where you thought you were done with that doubt, you thought you were done with that fear, you thought you were done with those systems, you thought you were done with discrimination? Have you been there? Where you thought you were done with those injustices? Not yet, but almost. And may I suggest that there will be some times in our lives where we will have to deal with some reoccurring issues that will force us to persevere and to pursue God. Paul had to deal with this a second time. And to make matters worse, he was dealing with his own issues as well. Paul was facing daily afflictions to the point where he was almost killed. And it kept him from going back to Corinth. Here we have Paul doing everything that he can do. Paul sacrificing everything that he has. We have Paul dealing with everything that's going on in his community, and he still got to deal with what's going on in his own life. Now he has to deal with the fact that the very people that he loved, the very community that he created, has now lost faith in him. The people lost faith because Paul couldn't be there when they needed him the most. They lost faith because he wasn't there to clean up the problems that they had created. They lost faith because even when he promised to come back, he didn't make it back. They thought that Paul was fickle. But he was dealing with his own problems as well. And isn't that how it is in our lives sometimes, where we find ourselves trying to help others and we're dealing with our own stuff as well? When we try to give all that we can, when we're trying to help somebody, when we're trying to uphold our Christian responsibilities and duties, but we have our own family issues. Have you been there? When you're trying to give somebody in need all that you can give, but you got bills that you can't pay yourself. When you're trying to help raise somebody else's child, but your children are giving you hell in your own house. Maybe I'm talking to the wrong crowd. When you're trying to tell somebody about having a relationship with God, but we still have doubts and we still have concerns of our own, when we're trying to live a life that's worthy of God's approval, but we're dealing with our own issues. And sometimes it feels as if the weight of the world is on our shoulders and that nothing can lift that heavy load. But Paul gives us a friendly reminder that we're hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down at times, but we're not destroyed. Paul gets to a point in this text where he had to give his own testimony to help the people understand what he was going through. And let them know that yet you are going through, you need to realize that God is still on your side. Isn't it funny sometimes? Isn't it funny that we as Christians are the worst when it comes to admit what we're going through? Isn't it funny to you And to make matters worse, we start to believe that we're the only ones going through. So we can't tell nobody. And then we think we all by ourselves. Can I help you today? Because I think what happens is that we put up these facades, these spiritual facades, our church facades, that make us perform a framework of Christianity that does not allow us to be transparent. Wow. I'll say it again. We put up our facades, our cloaks, these coverings, what we want people to see. Not who we really are, but what we want people to see. And these very facades keep us from being transparent, not only with ourselves, but with God and the people around us. So when you walk in a church and you see a person, you must recognize that you don't know what they're going through. You don't know the trials that they're dealing with. You don't know the tribulations that they're trying to handle. You don't know the problems that have arisen in their lives. All you know is that they're in church. And I can pause right there, because the reason that many of us are struggling with the issues that we have is because we find it hard to help somebody else because we're ashamed to tell our own stories. Wow. Pastor, I didn't expect to get too many shots right there. The reason that many of us can't help nobody else because we are ashamed of our own stories. And many times it is because we have not yet realized that God has liberated us from some things that we're still holding on to. Maybe that's just my testimony. God has liberated you from some things that you're still holding on to. Yeah. And we're not able to help anybody or even help ourselves because we are afraid of what our testimonies say about us. We're afraid to tell people that we've had some hardships and trials. We're afraid to tell people we've been late on some bills before. We're afraid to tell people that we've lied and we've cheated and we've messed up. We're afraid to tell people that I used to be a gospel. I used to be a messy person. I even messed over other people. We're afraid to tell people that you've got some issues of your own. Well, but I like Christians, because y'all always got an answer. Y'all always got a Bible verse, a bookmark, some prayer cloth, some oil. I like y'all. But we can't be honest with ourselves or each other. Even when God has delivered you and brought you out of some of that stuff, you scared to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it no more. And you can't help somebody because you're still holding on to some things that God already helped you to let go of. All right. May I suggest that the reason that some of us are still holding on to it is because we really ain't been healed from it. I thought about this one. The reason that some of us are still holding on to it is because we haven't been healed from it. And the reason we can't tell anybody what we've gone through is because we really haven't gotten over the things that we thought we came out of. We haven't gotten over that relationship that didn't work out. We haven't gotten over that job that didn't work out. We haven't gotten over the problems that are in our lives, even though we are still here, even though you're still moving forward, even though God is still blessing you, you are ashamed to tell people about it. Maybe we need to look in our mirrors and ask God if He will help us let go of the things that He's already liberated us from. I think that's what we should do. God, help me let go of some of the things that you already liberated me from. That's why I like it when the great Nobel Peace Prize laureate Toni Morrison pens in her famous work, Beloved, that freeing yourself is one thing, but claiming ownership of that freed self is another. That ain't mine, that's Toni, but it's good, ain't it? Freeing yourself is one thing, but claiming ownership of that freed self is another. And there are some things that God has freed us from that we have yet to own. Well, I'll say that again. There are some things that God has freed us from that we have yet to own. What are you trying to say, preacher? I'm glad you asked. I'm trying to let you know that you may be blocking somebody else's blessing. You may be blocking somebody else's breakthrough because you're still holding on to some things that God has already brought you through. I knew it was going to get quiet there too. You may be holding somebody else's breakthrough back, holding somebody else's blessing back, because they're needing to see you get through what you've gone through. Yep. So they can get through the very thing that you've already been through. Right. And I don't know who I'm preaching to, but I need about 2 or 3 people in here that can testify that I'm not afraid of what I've been through. I'm thankful for my testimony. I'm thankful for my past, because when I look back over my life and I think things over, I can say that God has been good.
God has been good.
We're hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. Paul had to give his testimony. Not yet, but almost. And may I suggest that if you're still here today and you have breath in your body, that you ought to insert a but not into your life. You should insert that but not into the sentence structure of your lives. And you can say, I was down, but not out. That's been my testimony. I was hurt, but not hopeless. I was depressed, but not undelivered. I was desperate, but not discouraged. I was not who I want to be, but not who I used to be. Is there anybody in this place that's thankful that God has allowed them to put a but not in their situations and say that God is still able? Not yet, but almost. But I came to give you a few reasons that will help you maintain your faith even in the face of hardships. And the first thing that you have to do is anticipate the difficulty.
Yes.
Anticipate the difficulty. Now, this community that Paul was ministering to at Corinth were mad at Paul because Paul didn't keep his word. And even worse, there were people, Jewish scholars, and even some people in his own community that were giving conflicting messages about the gospel that Paul was preaching. They were saying that, Paul, you watering down the gospel. They were saying that, Paul, you are teaching a gospel that is unsatisfactory to God's approval. And Paul was trying to help this community at Corinth understand that they would need to reshape how they looked at the world and how they looked at their faith, and understand that the faith that we are dealing with is one where you must realize that difficulties are going to arise and they should be expected. Paul was trying to help the Corinthian community understand that the difficulty wasn't uncommon but expected. After all the mishaps that they were going through, after all that they were dealing with, they still couldn't understand how hardships come with the journey. And may I suggest that we too sometimes have these skewed theological perspectives. Because our expectations that following directions of God means that we're going to be exempt from the difficulties of life. Can I help you? Because even if you pray every day, even if you sing in every choir, Even if you come to Bible study and BTU, prayer service, even if you come here, pastors, good preaching every Sunday morning, guess what? You still will be pressed on every side. You still will be perplexed. You still will be persecuted. You still will be struck down. But guess what? You won't be destroyed. And I think we have to reframe the way we look at Christianity and realize that hardships are built into the fabric of our faith. Hardships are built into the fabric of our faith. Don't walk this Christian journey not expecting hardships, but I suggest you welcome them. They said, Rev, you sounding crazy now. Don't walk this Christian journey not expecting hardships. Welcome them. Because in your welcoming the hardships, you have an assurance that God is in the business of delivering. You don't welcome no hardships if you ain't got no faith. You don't welcome no hardship if you don't think that God can do it. You don't welcome hardships if you don't believe that God is able. I'm going to welcome some hardships because I can remember when I was deep down in sin, God delivered me. And if God is a deliverer, God can sustain you. If God can sustain you, then God can help you. And if God can help you, God will also keep you. Is there anybody in this place that can give God a shout? Because even when they're going through, God gives them power for their weakness. Not yet, but almost. And may I suggest that many people don't make it through the hard times because they don't have the strength or the will to make it. And I think it's not just that they don't have the strength or the will, but they went into their situation with the wrong expectations. I think that's it. They went into their situations with the wrong expectations. It wasn't because they weren't smart enough. It wasn't because they weren't savvy enough. It wasn't because they didn't go to church enough. But they went into their situations with the wrong expectations. And what Paul is trying to help this community understand was that this walk with God won't be a bed of roses, but rather a journey of trials and overcoming. Trials and overcoming. And so what we must do is shift the way we think about this. What if we saw God's goodness in every hardship we have? What if we saw God's goodness in every pain that we have? What if we saw God's goodness in every loss that we have? Because I believe that the real question of your faith is not how you respond when good things are happening. It's not how you respond when you get the promotion, when you get your nice car, when you're wearing your nice clothes and you walk into your new houses. Not how you respond then, but the real question is, can you praise God when things start going wrong in your life? Can you praise God when things start falling apart? Can you praise God when things start messing up in your life? In the midst of your troubles, can you shout, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. I'm not a sometime saint. I used to be. But I'm not a sometime saint. I know that there are situations and there are times where I'm going to go through some things, but I got to believe that my praise will be continual despite my circumstance. Not yet, but almost. Because once you reshape your theological notions, then you can anticipate the difficulties. And so once you can anticipate the difficulties, then you know that, and you must understand that your hardships should not wane your hope. Your hardships should not wane your hope. Why? Because there is still a blessing in our burdens. And all God you need is God to overcome them. there's a blessing in your burden. There's a blessing in your trial. There's a blessing in your storm. There's a blessing in your temptation. There's a blessing in your thorn. There's a blessing in your struggle. But what happens is that we go through our trials and we're so traumatized that we can't recognize the lesson that we were supposed to learn in that situation. We're so messed up by it, so discombobulated, so confounded, so confused that we can't see what God's trying to show us in the midst of our situations. And in my life, there have been moments where I thought things were so bad that I was blinded to the blessings that God had already provided. And if you receive that lesson, then you realize that all you need is a mustard seed of faith. See, I realize I ain't have to see the whole picture. I just need to see a little bit of the picture. I just need to see a little light at the end of the tunnel. All you needed was a mustard seed of faith, and God can move what seems to be mountains in your life and get them out of the way. I think that's why the old saints used to testify, the Lord is blessing me. Right now, oh, right now. Is there anybody in this place that can say, I may have burdens, but he woke me up this morning. I may have trials, but he started me on my way. I may have some hardships, but he gave me all my faculties. I may bless the Lord at all times, and his praise will continually be in my mouth. The Lord is blessing me right now, in the midst of my struggles right now. And may I suggest that once you understand the difficulties are going to come in your life, once you understand that there's a blessing in your burdens and there's a lesson to learn in the storm, then you can appreciate that your experiences didn't exterminate you.
Right. Yes, yes.
Pastor, I thought I was going to get some shouts right there. Maybe you could appreciate that your experiences didn't exterminate you.
Right.
When you look back over the years, you recognize that God kept you. And I ain't got to go to dinner with each and every one of you to realize that God has been keeping you, and God has been holding your hand, and that God has been sustaining you and giving you everything that you need. The very fact that you're sitting in this church and you're looking at me, you're breathing in fresh air, God has kept you. When you look at some of the places you've been, when you look at some of the things you shouldn't have done, or you did, when you look back over your life, you can say, I should have been messed up. I should have been strung out. I should have failed at life. I should have been locked up. I should have been dead in my grave, but I just need about 2 or 3 people that can say that what should have been wasn't. Maybe I got to say it correctly. What should have been was not. And what they went through didn't take them out. Is there anybody in this place that's thankful that God doesn't allow us to look like the very things that we've been through? What I went through didn't hurt me. What I went through didn't deter me. What I went through didn't hold me back. What I went through didn't kill me. Not yet, but almost. Is there anybody that can testify with assurance that no weapon formed against me shall prosper? Because, here it is, because what the enemy meant for my bad, God took that bad and worked it out for my good. I'll say it again. What the enemy meant to take you out. What the enemy meant to hurt you, what the enemy meant for your bad, God transformed it in his powerful hands and worked it out for your good. And that's why I can say I've had some good days, and I've had some hills to climb. I've had some weary days and some sleepless nights. But when I look around and I think things over, all of my good days outweigh my bad days, and I won't complain. I'm thankful. What should have killed me didn't. I'm thankful my experiences didn't exterminate me. Paul says we're pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. Pressed, applying pressure. That means God is applying a heaviness to get out of us something he's already put in us. God is applying a heaviness to get out of us what he's already put in us, so that we can come to this, I'm done right here, to the reality that life may force you to bend, but God won't allow us to break. Life is going to force you to bend, but God won't allow us to break. I'm done right here. I'm reminded of being home and being a young child, and I have two other, I used to say little brothers. Now they big brothers, big little brothers. I'm the oldest, and we used to play a lot. Play football, play basketball, dug holes in my mama's yard, acted like we were playing golf, and I don't know if you've been a little boy like me, and you was just experimental. You know, you just wanted to do everything. You do things you know your mama saw you do, you wouldn't do again. So there was a tree that was in our backyard, and we used to jump on this tree all the time. And there was this long branch, and this branch was one of those branches that was by itself. It just kind of hung. And so we just thought it was a good idea to climb the tree and just hang from this branch. Hang, and we would bend that branch all the way and then let it go and then spring back up. And I'm reminded of one day me and my brothers had the real smart idea that all three of us was gonna get on this branch. Now, because we've been through this so many times, we knew that the branch was strong enough to hold us. But my mama, just looking at this, thought that if these boys fall off this tree, they're gonna have to deal with me, and then they're gonna go to the hospital. But because we experienced this branch so many times, we knew that it was strong enough to hold us. And so I got on and we bent it. Winston got on, he bent it. Weldon even got on and he bent this branch. And my mama ran out there, boy, what are y'all doing? And I said, Mama, don't worry. It'll bend, but it will not break. And my mama said, boy, you better get down off of that tree. But I think that's what I want to give you today. No matter how much you've gone through, if you've been through it with God, you can get on the branch of God and keep on bending. And life may bend you, life will bend you, but God won't allow it to break you. Is there anybody in this place that can say, I've been in some not yet but almost moments in my life, but when I think about the goodness and the greatness of God and all that he's done for me, I can shout with joy because I've been bent, but God didn't allow me to break. Oh, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that there was another man who said, I'm gonna get on a tree for you. I'm thankful that he stretched his hands wide. They put nails in his hands. They put nails in his feet. They put holes in his sides. I'm thankful that he went up on that cross on Friday, stretched wide, and then they put him down in a grave on Friday night. He stayed there all night Friday night, all night Saturday night, but early one Sunday morning, early only one Sunday morning. The devil thought he had him, but he got up with all power in his hands. And he said, not yet, but almost. I've got victory for you. I've got peace for you. I've got joy for you. Because this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. And the world can't take it away.
No.
My friend said, Willie, how do you keep your faith? I said, because I've been through and I've seen our people go through. We've been bent, but we've never broken. Have you lost your faith? Have you thrown in the towel? Have you given it all up? Not yet, but almost. Come on, let's give God a hand clap of praise.
You can put your hands together. What do you want the Lord to say? What do you want the Lord to say? Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter in the joy of the Lord. Come on, choir. What do you want the Lord to say?